I'd like to begin with a story of one of the people I worked with, my client Rama, and she has been a very high performing engineer at Amazon in Seattle, Washington, and she's a great performer, very intelligent techie, great software engineer. Gets a lot of things done in a very short time and has been on a very high, fast trajectory of growth. And she approached me last year. She's all of 32, and she approached me last year saying that she needed, to overcome the extreme anxiety that she felt, the sleeplessness that she had. She would clench her jaw and her hands and her legs, and she would actually wake up feeling a lot of pain in her body because she had this habit of clenching. She was very easy to cry, and she would end up becoming very emotional in meetings, where and for no reason at all. And she was just having a lot of hard time just coping with a lot of different things. And when I asked her for how long has she been, in that state, and she said that that's just part of her personhood, and that's how she has been since she remembers being whatever she remembers herself being. And this is, has been a very ingrained part of her personality, and she's tried a lot of different remedies to help her, but nothing has helped her completely or healed her completely or helped her really deal with it at the root and eradicate this issue that is causing all of these different symptoms. So I worked with her, in my holistic way of, dealing with the body, working on her diet, working on her energy, and then using various different methods to help her change some of her beliefs that she had for herself. And I also looked at her family history, and what are the different events of significance in her family. And one thing that came up is that Rama, she was a surviving twin. She had a twin sister who died at birth, and but Rama, this lady, she survived. And so she grew up with a lot of survivor's guilt, and you see that in a lot of people who are survivors of accidents also. They survived and it's a miracle, but they actually end up having a lot of guilt for surviving, guilt for having that life, and they feel that, oh, they should have died and the other person should have lived. And what happens is that certain very specific tendencies develop in such people, and most of them, as is there in different studies. And one part of it is that they try to live their lives as if they were living for two. It's like, I don't deserve this life, somebody else had to die for me to live, though that's not true. They died because they died, and you live because you lived. But in their mind, the way their psychology gets shaped is somebody else had to die because I had to live, and so now I need to live every moment, be worthy of every moment of my life, and actually give my 200% in my life. So Rama also had some of these traits, and we were working on them through the system that I had. But we also inquired, I also asked her to inquire with her family, her parents, if the proper rituals were done for this departed sister, this sister of hers who died right at birth, her twin sister. And she died in a couple hours after her birth. And when it was discovered that those rituals were not done, because at that time they were in a state of shock, and they were also dealing with this new baby and this departed baby. And what the advice that they got was that for such a small child, no rituals are needed and they don't need to do anything. um, Also, Rama felt great guilt whenever she talked about her sister, or whenever she even thought about her sister. And she felt that a lot of her tears and a lot of her spontaneous crying and a lot of these different things happened because of that disconnect over there. So what we did is we got the proper rituals, the remedy rituals done for that departed sister who had departed 32 years ago. And the ceremony involved, based on the advice of the priests, it involved carving the form of a 32-year-old lady on a gold foil, and reading out Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam entirely to this to this form in front, to this apparition, to this form of that representing her sister. And then certain Pavamano Havans and Til Havans, and certain different yagyas and different rituals were done for this departed sister. And also, then after all the rituals were done, etc., then then this gold foil along with the paraphernalia was then offered in the water, was allowed to go inside the water. And also proper food offerings were done to that form, and also to the crow and the cows. And however possible. So certain Shraddh ceremonies were done, and then they did an intention, they did a sankalpa that they would perform her Shraddh every year based on the recommendation and the guidance of that priest. Now, having done that, she had this wall where she had the different pictures of her family members, of her eldest sister, herself, and her eldest sister's children, she herself, her husband, her parents, and her husband's parents, all of that. She had this nice beautiful wall, and I told her to put a representative form for her sister as well. So Rama, being this very great artist, she made this very beautiful painting of two girls together, twin girls together, representing herself and her sister. And uh, and she made this very beautiful painting of both the sisters being in joy, and she put that in the family wall. So by doing all of these different things, helping her overcome her survivor guilt, helping her deal with the rituals that needed to be done for that departed soul, and giving her a proper place in the family, Rama's problems of spontaneous crying gradually got dissolved away. Also, her clenching of her teeth and clenching of her fists and her legs, that problem also resolved itself over the course of doing all of these things. And it took about 6 months to get all of these things done and healed and whole and all of that. And she felt more comfortable in her own being. There was a lot of healing that also happened in communicating about this departed sister with her family, because they had never talked about her. That grief was all like a pent up, like a held up energy in the hearts of each and every family member, but they never discussed it, and they never had a chance to release that pain. And by having an open conversation around these things, and it brought in a lot of healing for the family. So by working on acknowledging the departed family member and doing the proper rituals for her, brought about a lot of healing, and giving her a proper place in the family system brought about a lot of healing for Rama. And it's very interesting that there was that just by doing some of these things, we made so much progress that would have otherwise taken so many years of working on her mind, and just trying to help her process a lot of these emotions, help her heal emotions. And when she had visited a psychiatrist, when she was dealing with all of these emotions, she was also given some medication for sleep, for anxiety, and a little bit of ADHD, and so many different things. But it's very amazing that our sciences have such there is such depth in our sciences that recognizes that relationships don't end with death. We remain in this interconnected system, and we have this beautiful interconnectedness and this interdependence with even those who have departed. And we need to continue honoring them and offering our respect and gratitude to those who have departed. So there are proper rituals that are there in the Vedic system that help us follow some of these things, and acknowledging them, giving a place to them, helping them in their onward journey, helping them move on to the future destination in their life, and continuously making the offerings of gratitude over the many years. Now, it's not just in the Vedic system that we have all of this beauty. This is also there in various cultures across the world. It's practiced in China, it's practiced in Vietnam, it's practiced in South Korea, it's practiced in, the Korean nations, it's practiced in the Southeast Asian nations. It's also practiced in Africa. It was practiced in the ethnic religions of Europe, the ethnic cultures and religions of Europe before Islam and before Christianity. The Slavic cultures, the Celtic cultures, the Serbian cultures. There are various different rituals that they perform that are very similar to what we have learned, what we have understood in the Vedic system. It was also practiced in Africa, Madagascar, also in the South Americas, in Native America, and the Native American culture in North America. And if you want to understand how the Mexicans did it, you can also watch this Disney movie Coco, where it's an animated movie about a Mexican family in Mexico, and how this young child feels a deep connection with one of his ancestors, and how he's able to, and how there are different rituals that are done for those ancestors, and what happens to those ancestors when those rituals are not done, etc. So there's a lot of similarity across world cultures. about our connectedness with our ancestors and about our responsibility to the family members and ancestors who have departed. And there's a lot of beauty in it, and we all must do it as an act of gratitude to them. Now, why should we do, what are some of these rituals that we can do, and why should we do them, and how does it help our ancestors? I'll just get into a few details here, technical details with you. There are at least 96 different days during the year when, we that are recommended for us to do different rituals for our ancestors. And 96 can, become overwhelming for some of us with the kind of, careers we have or the work we have, or we're just not used to it, and it can get just so overwhelming. So the recommended is that on the day of the departure of your ancestor every single year, and also during the 15 days of the Shraddha Paksh. So the Vedic system has this very beautiful 15 days allocated to offer our respects to our ancestors. And not just the Vedic culture, all these cultures that I'm talking about, apart from observing the day of departure, these cultures also have a certain period during the year where ancestral oblations are offered. So on the day of the departure of your ancestors or your family members, and also during that period where the ancestors are remembered, it is important that we do some offering for them. Usually, cooked food is offered. We first offer it to the Lord, then we offer that as to a qualified saintly person, or we distribute it, and we also give it to the crows and the cows and the dog and the fire and the ants, right? So that offering helps. Also, sometimes we're not able to cook, then dried offerings also are acceptable, like grains and fruits and vegetables. Uncooked offerings are also accepted, and that can be given away in the name of your ancestors as charity. So these 2 days every year are very important. If you can do a little more, then remembering your ancestors on the no moon days, the Amavasyas, are also is also recommended, very important. I have grown up with the culture where we remember our ancestors on those days. And it is mentioned in the Garud Puran, Lord Vishnu explains that the ancestors keep waiting at the door of their family member, hoping that there will be an offering and they will get that particular offering. Now, the question may be asked is that, how is it that feeding a saintly person here, how does the offering reach our ancestors? And that is also described in the Garud Puran. It is shared through the agency of the Devatas. Right? So the Vasus, Rudras and Adityas, they enter the body of the Brahmana, the saintly person whom we have invited home for, for accepting the offering on behalf of our ancestors. And the Vasus, the Rudras and the Adityas, they represent our 3 generations of our ancestors. And when they enter the body of the Brahmana or the saintly person, they accept that offering, and then that offering is then transferred to our ancestors. It is also transferred, sometimes our own ancestors also may enter the body of the Brahmanas assembled, as it's described in the Ramayana, where Mother Sita, Lord Ram and Lakshman are performing the Shraddh ceremony, performing this oblation ceremony for Dasharath Maharaj, father of Lord Ram. And when the Brahmanas, they invite 3 different Brahmanas to represent 3 different generations. And then they sit down to honor the food offering, the prasadam. Mother Sita gets very disturbed, and she goes away into the behind in the forest, and she watches everything from a distance. And then once the Brahmanas leave, and when she comes back to their place of living, Lord Ram asks her, like, why did you leave from there? And Sita gives this she explains that she saw the dazzling form of her father-in-law Raja Dasharath enter into the body of one of the Brahmanas. And the other two Brahmanas also, she saw some very beautiful, kingly, royally dressed people, souls enter into those bodies and honor the prasad. And she got a little overwhelmed by watching that. And because her father-in-law, Raja Dasharath, was in his full king and royal finery, and she was not, she was in these forest clothes, and she's never appeared before her father-in-law in those forest clothes. She's always come before him as dressed as, a royal. She thought it would disturb her father-in-law to see her, stripped, bare and without all that royalty and being in very simple clothes. And that's why she stayed away. So this is something that is also explained in the Ramayana. The third way in which our ancestors receive that food is through the agency of the Pitrus. So some of our ancestors who may have not yet received another body, and they may be very wonderful and great souls, and they reside in the place of the ancestors, the planet of the ancestors, which is called the realm of the ancestors, which is called as a Pitru Loka. And while they are there, the representatives of the Pitru Lokas, the denizens of Pitru Lokas, descend wherever the Shraddha ceremony is happening, and they enter the body of the Brahmana and they accept the offering on behalf of our ancestors, and then they transfer it to them. Now, the question you may have is, if our ancestors have probably, they're already in some other form, they've already accepted another body, then how does it reach them? And what do they get? How does it benefit them? Now, what happens is that wherever your ancestors are, whatever acts of charity and whatever acts of food offering that you have done in their name, with great gratitude and great affection towards them, that feeling reaches them, that feeling of satisfaction and that connectedness reaches them, and it gives them the confidence to deal with whatever they're dealing with in that situation. Another thing that happens is that it eases their life wherever they are. So if they're already in a different body, then they may, if you're giving money in charity here, they receive abundance of wealth in whichever form of life they are in. This is also understood in the cultures of the East, the Orient, in China, Vietnam, etc., where they actually also put in money, in the offering for the ancestors. Or if they are in the form of a cow, then on that day they receive wonderful grasses, very juicy grasses to eat. And say if they are a horse, then what happens is that they're taken very good care of, and they actually receive a very elevated form. So they would probably be a racehorse in their next life. So this is how our offerings actually enable and bless our ancestors. And say if they are in their onward journey, like while you're doing the offering after your family member has departed, you're doing the offerings for those 13 days after their departure, and also for the entire year you're following all the rituals. Then during that transition phase, when they are between bodies, then they've left this particular identity and they're trying to enter another body, they're waiting for that, and they're under that transition process, they undergo a lot of difficulty. They undergo all types of physical difficulties, and they undergo all types of emotional difficulties. The physical difficulties because they're going through different terrains, they're going through different places, and probably imagining the worst case scenario, they're if they have to go through the Yamadutas, then they are going through a lot of trouble. The Yamadutas are giving them a hard time because of their own acts, and also they go through a lot of difficulties with without any proper facilities, a lot of hunger, a lot of thirst, etc. So whatever offerings we do during those 13 days and throughout the year of their departure is the only food and water and facilities that they receive. So according to our the Vedic system, during those 13 days and the 12th day, a lot of charity is given in the name of our ancestors. And how does that help them? That helps them cross go through all the difficulties, help them cross the Vaitarna river, helps them deal with those difficulties. So by us offering an umbrella here, they get a lot of shelter there from the sun and the rains. By us offering shoes over here, they get protected from the thorny paths that are there on their way. So all of these different things are described in great detail in the Garud Puran, and this is how our offering here reaches them. Now one may wonder, in what mood we do this, and why should we do this for our ancestors? We do this as an act of gratitude, as I've mentioned earlier, because whatever we are in this lifetime, the very moment we took birth in that family, we received a certain culture, we received certain facilities, we received a certain social status, we received certain opportunities, and none of that would have been possible without the work that our ancestors did and how that transferred over generations to us, without the work that our fathers did, our forefathers did, and mothers, right? So whatever we are is possible because of our ancestors. Now some of us may say that, I didn't have a great life and my family didn't do much for me, and so why should I do this for my ancestors? Well, the very fact that you have a body that is possible because of your ancestors, and that is their gift, that is the possibility is because of them. And just the fact that we have this vehicle to help us transcend the cycle of birth, disease, old age, and death itself is we must be grateful enough so that we can offer our gratitude to them and serve them and make their onward journey easy and keep them encouraged as they're going through those different transitions, transition of identity, transition of, all those different changes. So this is why we engage in them, engage in these activities. And now some of us may also, there's a lot of fear around, in some people I have seen, that, oh, if we don't offer these oblations, these offerings to our ancestors will get upset and they'll cause a lot of trouble. Yes, there is trouble when we don't offer proper, these acts of gratitude to our ancestors. But that those troubles don't come to us because our ancestors have become spiteful and angry and they're upset that, oh, you didn't serve me and I'm this arrogant person and I'm going to cause harm to you. No, that's not why those troubles come. Those troubles come in the form of not being able to have progeny, having unnecessary discord between, family members, separation of the husband and the wife, or the progeny is born with, various difficulties or defects, or, a lot of health issues, in the family, a lot of losses in business, a lot of difficulties in growing your career, and so many different things. Now, this is not the curse of your ancestors. What is happening is basically all these things coming is, your own karma, where you have not done your duties towards your ancestors and you're just enjoying without doing your duties. But it is also a cry for help. This is the way the ancestors are dependent on us, our departed, family members are dependent on us for their, for their, journey, their onward journey, their sustenance, and their, they're really sometimes they're totally dependent on us for whatever food we're offering here. And now you may wonder, like, what are the timeline differences here? We're offering only once a year, and how does it reach them? Now, there are details around that which I can't cover right now because of the shortage of time. But the principle is they are dependent on us for their well-being wherever they are. And when there are some difficulties here, that is basically their way to attract your attention. Usually what happens is when there are these kind of difficulties, that are unsolvable, we try to get help. Like Rama, and I connected, and then, we were able to resolve this thing. Some people also visit their family priest or visit an astrologer. And by looking at, there are indications that help you understand, that are described in the Vedic scriptures, that are described in the Garud Puran, that help you understand that these are issues coming from Pitrudosh, ancestral, trauma and ancestral debts that haven't been paid. And then what happens is that the family gets re-established in performing those rituals again towards those ancestors, and therefore the ancestors receive whatever they need to receive and they become relieved because they're totally dependent on you. So this is not the anger or the spite of the ancestors that is happening upon us, but basically that is their way of trying to get your attention to, so that you can reset and recalibrate and, include these rituals again in your family traditions. So these are some things, some brief things that I can talk about. I also, created this course with a lot of details, a lot of frequently asked questions about, this, and a lot of details about the soul's journey, and the details about each ritual and how each ritual needs to be performed. And here are some of the details in this course. So we begin with discussing the soul's journey after death. We discuss the rituals that are performed just before death and just after death, and then the last rites. How, what are the different details that need to be taken care of during the last rites and the 13-day ceremonies, and how that facilitates the soul in their onward journey. We discuss the 5 types of debts that every human being has and what are the methods to repay. And we could get into greater detail in this course with the whole debt that we have around for our ancestors. We discuss the significance of samskaras, the rites of passage that happen at every age with the Antyeshti or the last rites and the Shraddha. Samskaras being the ones of significance for this course. We understand ancestral deaths, traumas, Pitrudosh, Pitrurin in greater detail. I explained the 12 types of Shraddh ceremonies and the 96 occasions on which during the year in 365 days that we can perform Shraddh. Details around the need and the ritual for the yearly Shraddh, the monthly Shraddh, the daily Shraddhs that we could do, the Tarpan. and also the ones that we do during the Shraddh, 15 days, and also during no moon days. I discuss about the great personalities from scriptures who have performed Shraddh. And then we talk about ancestor veneration in world cultures, details from each world culture, and also the similarities with our Sanatan Dharma. And also learning how to spot any ancestral trauma and Pitradosh issues in your life, current life, and learning how to heal them. Looking at the science, what scientists say about intergenerational trauma, what is the work that has been done in that regard, and how the Vedic system, the Sanatan Dharma system of doing all of these rituals actually protects us from that intergenerational trauma that science has newly discovered. I get into great detail about Bert Hellinger's work on family constellations, and it is impossible for me to not, include this in the course because I have personally witnessed a family constellation for myself. Discuss setting up a constellation with me and my ancestors, and I have been pretty wonderstruck with some of the results that came from that and the healing I received from that. Also, learning how to communicate with your ancestors and heal them, help them move forward on their path. A lot of different stories, a lot of different true stories and stories from scripture, contemporary stories and stories from scripture for each of these things that I am discussing in the course that are covered in this course. And also a lot of frequently asked questions like who can perform these rituals, who has the right, can women perform these rituals or not? Of course, women can. Then what is the significance of sesame seeds, the kusha grass, the pindas that we make, the use of silver, rice, flowers, and more? And why do we feed the cow, the crow, the ants, the dog, and the fire during the Shraddh ceremony? And who is a proper qualified recipient of the Shraddh charity that we do? And who should we perform Shraddh for? What is our family lines that we perform Shraddh for? Who belongs to those family lines? And for how long do we perform those Shraddh ceremonies? For how many years? And are there any special rituals for miscarriages, abortions, and untimely deaths? And, okay, now, I've heard all of this, but I'm really short of time. There's, so much that I'm not used to this also, and I don't have access to many things. So, what can I do to remember my ancestors? What is something simple that I can do to express my gratitude to my ancestors with my full heart and my full feeling?
Thank you
So,
again
these are some of the
for
things that
being with me this far,
have
and I
covered in the
highly
course.
encourage
And if you
you
want, you can
to
access the course through the
take
link
up this in your
indicated above,
life and start thinking
bit.ly
about
slash
what are the
ancestors
different things that you can
GEV.
do to express your gratitude towards your ancestors. Must at least do these two twice a year ceremonies, and if possible every month on no moon days, but at least on twice a year in these days of ceremony. Who all are our ancestors, who all constitute that family that we need to offer our oblations. It's not just the blood relatives and our previous generations or our siblings, etc., who may have passed away. These offerings are also done for your pets, because you have received some love, some affection for them, and you're still from them, and you're still connected with them. You also offer that to those people who have worked for you, those people who you have worked for, from the cows that you got milk from the trees that you got shelter from the trees in your backyard, and all of these different people who were connected with you, from whom you have received wonderful love and affection and care. We're still connected to them. We also offer it to the soldiers who are protecting us, and we also do these different rituals for the different saintly people that are there. Now it becomes very difficult and very practically to do it for each and every person twice a year. So there are what you can do is for your immediate family members and those close to you, you can do it twice a year. And there are recommendations on who does it for which people and who has a right to do it, who and how the the immediate generation after the generation that has departed has the right and the responsibility to do it. The ones below them just follow and assist them in those services. And if the immediate generation is not doing, then the responsibility falls to the generation below. So there are some details around that which are there in the course, but you can do it for all of these different people, at least for those 3 generations above you, at least twice a year. But at least for the immediate generation above you, twice a year, and for the 2 generations above that, at least once a year during that 15-day period. And for all of these different souls that I talked about, what you can do is during that 15-day period, the last day is again a no moon day, and that day is dedicated to all these different souls that have come in our life, from whom we have benefited, or whom we've even forgotten for whatever we've received from them. And that day you can dedicate to all of these different souls, these departed souls in your life, and these souls who have benefited. So let's make this a habit. I highly encourage you to do these acts of gratitude towards your ancestors, to perform these ceremonies, also called as a Shraddha ceremony, in your life, and express your gratitude to your ancestors. Help them heal their trauma, and you help heal any intergenerational trauma that has come down to you, and experience the dissolving of a lot of different obstacles, experience a lot of mental peace for having done your duty and having resolved all of these traumas, and have a wonderful life ahead. Thank you very much.